For having me, Scarf team, and also thanks to like a lot of our joint customers like Weaviate for the I don't know if it's a referral or just like the extra love that we're getting. I really enjoy hearing how people are doing these additional use cases with Common Room and Scarf combined. Quick background on myself is I lead the marketing team at Common Room. We'll get into Common Room things later on, but I also have a background in working at leading growth at Segment and leading marketing at Retool, and then advising for a lot of other open source companies. So um, I, I don't know how to code, or I don't I'm not technical by trade, but I do somewhat know how to do marketing and go to market for those types of companies. And so hopefully this is helpful and accurate for the group here. But let's get into, and also my talk is kind of more go-to-market oriented. It's like, what do we do with commercial open source or open source for go-to-market? And based on all my experience, I get this question a lot from companies that have like a lot of open source traction, which is, a CEO comes to me and they're like, hey, our open source software is getting like this crazy growth and traction. How do exactly do we turn that into revenue? I feel like this is a common pattern, and a lot of times these CEOs and founders are just like they don't even know we have a commercial offering. They don't know what our brand is. Like, we built this open source software, and like people love it. Like, how do we market ourselves, or how do we go to market the right way? And honestly, most advice out there, in my opinion, is really not. I wouldn't say it's garbage. I mean, the slide is like intentionally hyperbolic, but it is usually non-actionable. It's like, be authentic, turn it to dark mode, speak their language. I feel like all of these things just kind of like fall under the bucket of like, yeah, no duh, I need to do these things. Like, this is just core principles of like how to have empathy for your audience. And it's not like it's not really practical advice in my point of view. So hopefully the things that I'm sharing through this uh presentation and demo are somewhat actionable for the group here. Yeah, like I like this one. This is one thing that someone told me as an CEO. I won't name which one. Is like, how do I get on the front page of Hacker News? I want to get on the front page of Hacker News. It's like, yeah, duh, of course. I get a crack up from that one. Okay, so I so what do we do? This kind of begs the question. Like, okay, great. So what's actually actionable? And I'm a big fan of Charlie Munger. I say, listen to Uncle Charlie. It's like, we've got to fish where the fish are. Also, it's a duh statement, but I think this gets into like how we can take an actionable approach to go to market for open source. And so where are the fish? And I've been following this slide takes a little bit of explanation. So I've been a fan of the show Silo. I think it's on Apple. I think it's on Apple. And so this is the background of Silo. These little holes in the ground are silos. The silos just go down in the ground versus up. So not the best visual, but I wanted to fit in my affinity for the show into this slide. But for the most part, developers, engineering teams are in these channels specifically. Like, I handpicked these from the sources of signal that we can capture in Common Room. And so the big one here is GitHub, of course, but there's other places where your core audience as a commercial open source offering is hanging. These are the watering holes. But this approach, or this signal is challenging in two ways. One, it's siloed. It's hard to connect the dots between what's happening on X or Twitter versus what's happening in your product versus what's happening in a GitHub repo. And that's something that Common Room can help out with, and I'll get into. And then the other problem, which Scarf helps to solve, and then also Common Room helps to solve as well, is understanding the person behind the signal. And so I have this slide here of, a lot of people are pseudonymous on GitHub in these types of channels. And so to know that, Kaiser Sose here is actually, Victor from Strappy, is a friend of mine. And like, this is kind of like the information that we're able to uncover while also staying GDPR compliance. This is the kind of information that we you need to make these activity happening in these silos and these siloed places actionable. And so this is what Common Room and also what Scarf can help do. And so the general premise for our platform, what we do is three things. There's three pillars to how we can help you take action on these developer dev tooling type signals. One is aggregate buying signals from many different sources. We classify it as first party, second party, third party data. You can think of it as account information. You can think of it as contact information. You can also think of it as internal data, what's happening inside of our CRM or inside of our products, and then also external information, like what's happening on all the channels mentioned here. And so what we do really well is ingest all of that signal using APIs, using our own built-in native out of the box kind of products, and pull in signal from these different places. And then the other really important factor here is not only do you pull in the signal, but you understand, the person and the account behind the signal, and have really strong identity resolution to know that like this person who is active in this GitHub repo is also the same person or at the same company where their CEO is maybe looking at engaging in a Discord community, or they're maybe that's a bad example. I don't know how many CTOs are in Discord communities, or they're following your competitor on X, or doing something else. And so the ability here to aggregate all the signals and then also identify which accounts and which people within those accounts are partaking in those signals, and roll those up into a single entity, like a user contact profile or an account profile. That's like really hard to do. And that's the type of stuff that, as you're building your software, you don't want to have to like engineer yourself. We've seen people do it before. It becomes like a big mess and nightmare. And so that's the kind of things that Scarf and Common Room can help out with. And then the last pillar here is just like, okay, now that we've combined these two things, we have some sense of signal, we have sense of priority because of the person or the account behind that signal. Then like, what do we do from the go-to-market execution side of things? And I guess we can classify Scarf signals as kind of second-party signals, but this is one area where why we partner so closely with Scarf is we work with a ton of open source software companies, commercial open source companies, and Scarf is really pivotal to providing those really granular signals across all sorts of usage, both on the open source side and product side, and all the stuff that we've kind of been viewing throughout this summit here. Okay, so then what this looks like in Common Room, and I'm going to demo this, so I know it's like super small to see right now, but what this looks like in terms of like the user experience is something like this. It's a burn down list, like ideal persona plus Scarf activity, and you get just a list of people who you can stack rank, or list people or accounts you can stack rank and then take action on. And so this kind of like outlines those different pillars of this whole like go-to-market motion. One is to identify the signal. So Scarf signals like events, last seen, funnel stage. These are all things that you can pull into a platform like Common Room. Then there's the aggregation of the person or the account behind the signal. So we have tagging, enrichment, stuff like that, filters. So you can say like, oh, I want people with 100 or more employees who are a decision maker, like their director level plus, et cetera, and filter by that. And then when you combine those two things, then you can start to take action on the people and the accounts behind the signal. So this is, we can send them to HubSpot. We can add them to an outbound sequence. We can connect with them on LinkedIn. We can prospect other people within that account and reach out to the CTO or the decision maker or whatever. So this is kind of like a view of how we would put all that together, and I'll demo this in the next minute or so. So yeah, speaking of which, let's do it live. Okay. Actually, I don't know if there's any questions or anything that came through. It doesn't look like it, so we can just go straight into demo. Okay, so this is a view of that I was kind of showing the last screen here. You can see that this is any contact with Scarf activity. We can see the total number of Scarf events. We can see the last time this person was seen from Scarf data, and we can see the Scarf funnel stage and the experimentation start date. These are all different types of data that's being passed from Scarf directly into Common Room. If I click add a filter here and type in Scarf, oops, saw that right, Scarf, we can see all these different filters, which you can pull in and change and modify and slice and dice in the way that you want to create this prioritized view to follow up with these contacts or these accounts who are identified via Scarf, passing data into common room, a signal into common room, and then start to combine signals or start to prioritize from there. So this is kind of like what this looks like in terms of like how you'd want to filter. Any one of these things could be its own column and its own way to pull in more visibility into what's going on between these people here, these contacts that they've identified with this signal. And then you can also sort or say like add a filter for, let's add a filter for Scarf stage. I think that's probably a pretty good one. Scarf funnel stage, and let's do ongoing usage interest. And so we can then now save this as a view for our, we can even add like an owner, deal owner, or like pull in data from your CRM to say, okay, this is your companies within your book of business who have this Scarf funnel stage. These are the accounts that you should be focusing on first, because those are the ones that are most likely to convert. And then the other stuff that we do really well in common rooms, you can select any one of these people who we have maybe an email address for, or we know their LinkedIn handle, and add them, take some sort of action from there. So we could send them into a specific sequence of that we've built for our outbound team. We can go to their LinkedIn profile. We can go to their GitHub profile. We can do some of that investigation to follow up in a way that makes sense of, okay, here's what we know about the actions that this person has taken within our repo or within other places, and like how do we follow up with them and give you an easy way to reach out and take action. The other thing I wanted to show, because it yeah, I think I should go back here actually. So the other thing I wanted to show is not only do you have that specific GitHub Scarf activity signals that they were pulling into common room, there's also like many, actually I should just go here. There's many other signals that we offer, and it's this is something that Soham was talking about, is like, not only do you want to like understand like what's going on within this GitHub signal, you also want to know the other things that are happening within that account, or what that other person is doing. Maybe it's engaging with your sales team. Maybe it's using your product trial. Maybe it's visiting your website. And that's where Common Room can kind of help out and aggregate all these signals together to what we call signal stacking. And so I just wanted to show you the library of signals that we have here. It's everything from stuff we offer out of the box, like our native signals, like website visits, prospecting, job changes, job listings. These are all things that you can just get out of the box of Common Room, but it's also bringing in all these integrations like LinkedIn, like X, like GitHub, like Slack, or Discord. These are all areas, they're all watering holes where the fish are fishing in, and you can pull that into Common Room as well and kind of like paint the whole picture of the customer and account journey. So let's like take a look at what that would look like in practice. And so here I have a demo instance where we have 55,000 organizations, and this also has that same kind of Scarf data. So let's add that as a filter first. Like if you were to drop this 55,000 accounts onto any rep, and you're like, hey, here's accounts that have Scarf data, go after it, they'd be like, oh, what am I supposed to do from here? This is overwhelming. I have analysis paralysis. And so like, let's filter down to a more workable set of accounts that we want to prioritize. So to do that, we can first apply some Scarf signal here. And let's do funnel stage again. We can just say like there's interest, investigation, or ongoing usage. Like these are our later stage funnel signals from Scarf. We've got that down to 11,000, still quite a lot of accounts to manage. And so here's maybe where we want to add an additional signal to stack on to prioritize which of these accounts that we should follow up with. And so, or run a play against. And so I'm going to click add a filter here, and I can then say, we could do URL visited. We could do pricing page, for example, as a signal. One that I really like to show that really works for open source companies specifically is a job listings keyword that we offer. So you could use job listing title or job listing keyword. So this one I like because you can get specific of like, oh, does their skill set have Kubernetes, or does it have, the one I like for this is open telemetry. So we have a lot of companies that like to listen in on this repo specifically. And so we can say anyone who's far along the Scarf funnel stage and is also active or is also has an open role with open telemetry in the job rec. These are the 200 accounts or whatever that we can now prioritize and then filter by sort ascending or descending order on whatever level of activity is like most recent or whatever kind of proxy you want to use there. And so from here, I would say, let's create a segment. I can't do this because I'm in demo mode. We can create a segment, which is essentially our word for a play, and say, okay, reps, here are these accounts that you want to prioritize. And then from here, you can click into each of these accounts or click into each of these accounts. They can do some sort of AI summarization, other fancy stuff that we do out of the box, but they can also see, here's all the contacts that we've identified. Here's their activity across all these different signals that we're aggregating, and just kind of do prioritize account research from there. Okay, and then the last thing I wanted to demo is a little bit separate from what we've been showing before. With Scarf data, this is more like open source GitHub signal specific, which is listening in on alternative repos that are maybe from a competitor or some other solution where your solution might be a better approach based on what you're inferring or pulling into Common Room, and then like investigating like what's actually happening there within these accounts. And so from here, we have alternative GitHub engagement. This is a repo that we don't own ourselves, but we're using our access token and our, let me just show you how this works real quick. Within Common Room, you can say add another GitHub signal and then say either I have admin access or I have a GitHub token, and use your token to listen in on any repo. So this is something that's like super easy to just connect to GitHub and then pull in signal from any repo. So that's what's happening here. And we can say, okay, let's do that same play. I'm going to select multiple people here, and I'm going to add them into Salesforce so that my team can follow up with a specific play, or we can add them directly into an outreach sequence or whatever sequencing tool you're using, all from within Common Room. And so these are some of the plays that we've seen our customers use. Like this in demo environments built off of the actual plays that our customers are running, like Weaviate, like SemGrep, like Temporal. There's a ton of companies that are using Common Room and Scarf together. And so just wanted to share all of this and hopefully was a helpful demo to kind of like share like what's possible with when you combine signals with stuff like Scarf that's super powerful. So that's it for the demo. I think there was a question here, and there's some other slides too that I wanted to touch on. Question. Oh, it's from from now we book meetings with companies directly calling out Weaviate on their job listings. Yeah, there you go. Thanks for sharing that. Okay, so let's say, okay, there's a little bit more left to cover here. And so let's say you have you've pulled signal in. The first question I always get is like, okay, what plays should my team run now? And so there's a few things that are like, these are tried and true plays. This question was asked in a previous session too. These are tried and true plays that some of our customers are running. And then there's some signal stacking plays below here that we can, that we've also seen work. So I don't need to like read through all this. It's just like, triage issues from VIPs in your GitHub repo. If there's more than one contributor in a repo plus they're a VIP, like this is a good play to run. By Scarf funnel stage, I kind of showed that. And then the more fun stuff here is hiring for a specific role. We covered that in the demo. There's GitHub activity plus they visited some sort of like docs page, like that group works really well. And there's high signal there. If there's GitHub activity plus engagement on social channels, like that's also another solid sign that like these accounts or these people are in market for your product. And then the next thing is, okay, I have this play. I'm going to reach out. Like, what should I say? And this is the part where a lot of people get hung up on, and we also kind of hit on in the previous session is, one reminder is you don't need to say anything. You can simply just use that signal to prioritize those accounts. Signal is one way to prioritize where even if you have zero signal, it's better for you to like obviously reach out to the accounts that are showing like some interest, and by chance you might reach out to the right person behind the signal. There is going above the line. So this is like I like to call it multi-threading. It's like there's a bunch of signal happening from practitioners who are obviously like engaged in some sort of initiative around your using your open source product or open source software. How do you reach to the decision maker or the person who should be in the know about that and offer out some help? The other things here are, reach out and offer a tip or help. This is something that we always try and coach up especially our open source software customers, is like, don't reach out in a self-serving way. Be helpful. If you're helpful, you have empathy for the end user, the recipients, like the results will follow. Along those same lines, fix that for them. If you see a bug that's or an issue that's part of the signal of like a GitHub repo signal that we pull in is issues. And so fix that issue, have someone on your engineering team fix that issue, and then report back to them when that issue is fixed or when that bug is squashed. Like that is super reciprocal, and like people will respond to that. If there's a product launch or a feature that you can reach out to and be helpful, like that's another good way to get a meeting booked. And then lastly, if all else fails, send them some cool swag, and that also helps out as well. If anyone sends me a dad hat, I'll pretty much take a meeting. So yeah, and then customers are doing this. SemGrep this is like their main way of generating pipeline. Temporal books a lot of meetings from it. Apollo is using it for different reasons. They're finding qualified leads and like fueling and prioritizing marketing awareness that way. Palumi's getting a lot of meetings booked, and then soon we'll have a Weaviate case study here and share some of their success too. So that's all I have. I talk about a lot of this stuff on LinkedIn, and you can try Common Room and do all this stuff for free. We have a 2-week free trial, and it's unlimited in terms of usage from what I shared here. So that is all from my little prezo and demo, and happy to take any questions.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Kevin. That was great. Yeah, and I think just to underline there, for any Scarf users here that want your data in Common Room, we have a native integration that can pipe all that data in an ongoing way, and feel free to ping us and we can help you get it set up. One question that we got in advance for this, so when it comes to the signals that are in Common Room, how should people think about basically learning what signals are actually most important? You talked about the signal stacking a lot. How do you think about which ones to really like focus on, and how to prioritize them, and how to incorporate them in a way where there's also just like signal overload sometimes as well? So,
Yeah, yeah. Speaking of which, I'm causing the problem here. But I get asked this question a lot, and I even have like a full-on presentation around it. The quick version of it is I created this because there are many signals. Like there's 100 signals in the sheet that you can reference. Like this helps with like the blank slate problems. Like what do I even start with? Then the other place I like to go to is, okay, if there's 100 signals, there's columns here of like how to group the signals. Is it a product signal? Is it a website signal? Is it an open source signal? And you can kind of like group these into these chunks. And so like I feel like this is a good way to understand like what signals matter to me based on my go-to-market motion. Like, do we have a lot of website traffic? Yes, then that is probably a good signal. But do we have an open source offering? Yes, that's probably a good signal. Do we have a self-serve product? No, then like these signals probably don't apply. And so just grouping like what signals maybe apply or don't apply, I've created this infographic for. And then the last thing, I have a lot of tabs here, sorry. The last thing vector to look at is this here. I think this should get to close to 100. Oh, where's the other filter here? 1 second. Okay, so on this tab in the spreadsheet, we have all of these signals in each row. And then there's 2 things that I like to look at for which signals should you start with. One is the propensity score. And what this means to me is just like the conversion rate. How likely is that if you act on that signal, will it convert to a next step, whether that be a meeting or a reply or whatever your next step is. And so just trying to do like either take inventory of what signals you've already been actioning on, and understanding like, okay, what's the conversion rate for here, or being assumptive of like, okay, we think people who sign up for our product and like they fit this ICP persona is going to be this conversion rate. So mapping that out is really helpful as one dimension. And then the other one is taking inventory on the volume of that signal, like how much frequency does that signal have per week or per month or whatever. And so that'll give you kind of a view of like, okay, we're getting all these high propensity signals, but like the volume is really, really low. And so this will help you prioritize, like we want to find somewhere like in the middle of, the volume of signal plus like the propensity to convert is typically the sweet spot of like where to start, because that's where the opportunity lies. I also created this, well, this is kind of a mess, but if you filter by the signals that are applicable here, you can, I try and start as far to the up and right as possible. So like in this case, it would probably be this like employee of competitor follow signal. And so hopefully this is a helpful resource. I know it's like I've been going over it super quickly here, but to map out these things, click on what's applicable, and then you can kind of see like, okay, which signal should I start with here in this upper right quadrant, which is both combining propensity to convert and then volume of the signal. Like those are the two vectors I'd look at.
Very cool. Thank you. That is, I think, a very a very comprehensive answer to that question. If
I
not
get it
one
a
that
lot. I
raises
get it a lot.
lots more
Yeah, yeah.
questions. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add, obviously, sorry, I raised my hand, just jumping
Please.
in real quick,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
is one of the first things I did when I joined and we had common room and scarf is actually went straight to the sheet that Kevin showed. But at the end of the day, it's kind of, especially as you're starting with lower volume, like you just see what's actually converting to qualified pipeline. I don't know if I missed that somewhere in there, but I think it's kind of like simpler than it needs to be, and the signals actually tend to be really, really simple when it comes to open source usage. And everybody has a tendency to kind of overthink and overbake these things. The more specific the specific signals are great. The framework through which at least it seems to be working for us is if you want people to source signals with high frequency, the signals need to be a little bit more basic to capture more volume. And the more specific the signals are, and if you stack 3, 4, 5 different criteria, it might hit once a month, and it might be a really, really interesting thing that hits once a month or once a quarter. But you should not be directing people to go spend time digging through that list on a regular basis. But to know what works, see what works, right? Like it's almost kind of like simple in essence, is you just got to try a bunch of things and then see what's actually working in terms of booking meetings. But
Yeah, I have
sorry,
another slide on this too. Can you see this like chart here?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So to that point, the place I like to start is where you get the highest conversion rate, which is typically like the lowest volume of signal if you're stacking things. And so and then the more broad, the more generic the signal, typically like the more volume they get. And so like I created this chart to show like typically the higher the volume, the higher the converting rate of signal, the lower the volume that you'll see. And then so I always advise people to start here and kind of like work your way backwards. And the job I feel of marketing is to try and generate as many signals as possible so that your sales team is always working in this yellow zone and never going to cold outbound, because cold outbound is like the worst. It's the lowest converting, but the most infinite amount of signal, just because it's like the whole universe of your TAM. And so I just kind of like found that this two by two kind of like dimensional chart is a good way to map out like your signal stacking or signal approach journey.
I really like that framework of working backwards on this. I think that makes a lot of sense, and also just I think very logical given what, the things like demo request is very, very obvious and
Yeah,
easy.
this area in the
Working
gray is
backwards.
actually like you
Yeah.
could just automate it. You don't need someone to think about it. So I
Right.
have it grayed out, but yeah.